I'm University of Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason. This is the closing market report on a Monday afternoon. Darrel Good joins us in studio to take up this morning's USDA acreage and grain stocks figures. Please review those numbers for me, Darrel.
Well, in the case of corn, we did see the estimate of June 1 stocks come in at 3.85 billion bushels, about 130 million bushels larger than expected. Corn acreage at just a bit over 91.6 million. That's pretty much in line with expectations and with March intentions that the USDA found in its survey earlier. The big surprise, I think, the important numbers were on soybeans. June 1 stocks at 405 million bushels. That's about 30 million bushels larger than the average trade guess. But on soybeans, with planted acres coming in well over 84 million, that's almost 3 million larger than the market was looking for. So I think the combination of stocks reports and acreage numbers point to very large supplies of both crops, particularly soybeans.
Acreage numbers are fairly easy to understand. That's a survey, what USDA found from farmers. The grain stocks numbers, a little less easy to understand. Is there a reason that the number for soybeans grew?
There's not an obvious reason. One thing that's unknown in terms of anticipating that number is the magnitude of imports during the month of May. The Census Bureau will release that number later this week, and since we are importing a lot of soybeans this year, it may have been that May imports were larger than the market expected. The other possible explanation is that last year's crop was actually underestimated, and that was finally revealed by larger stocks in this report. I think either of those explanations may explain portion of the surprise, but that will all have to be revealed over time as we get new numbers.
With the new numbers, the next set at least will be the WASDE, World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate for the month of July. How much of it will be changed, do you think?
You know, I think USDA is likely to raise its projection of year-ending stocks of both corn and soybeans. Probably resulting from a slightly lower projection of feed and residual use of corn, and we're also experiencing a bit of a slowdown in weekly shipments of corn. May see some trimming of the export projection. That change should be fairly minor, but the big news will be on their projections for the upcoming marketing year. Assuming they continue to project record high yields for both corn and soybeans, which seems likely at this point, we're going to see, I think, a much larger projection of soybean stocks at the end of the 2014-15 marketing year, perhaps jumping by as much as 100 million bushels from the June forecast.
How often, well, your expectation is that they may very well up the ante for yield then, and obviously for total production because of the acreage. Will they do the yield at the same time, or will they hold off until August?
No, the yield will not be an official survey-based yield. It'll still be a projection based on models of crop conditions. So they've started with projection of record yields based on those models, and I would expect those projections will be maintained in the July report.
It's not unheard of for them to change a yield, but that usually would happen in May. That has happened in May in recent years for the WASDE figures, but not in July. So we'll wait until August, most likely.
Right. There have been some changes in July in extreme years like 2012 drought. They did lower their yield projection prior to the official NASS survey in August, but I don't expect much of a change this year.
When you look forward, what do you see for the ending stocks now for soybeans in 2014-15?
I think we'll see those stocks probably approaching 400 million bushels. Again, based on the current crop conditions and yield expectations, and assuming that this acreage number does hold up, it's going to be a very large number. It's going to put considerable pressure on soybean prices.
And for corn?
You know, I think, USDA has been projecting that we will jump to 1.7 billion bushel carryover next year. I suspect that that will be at least that large and perhaps a little bit larger, because it seems like we now have potential for even higher corn yields And if that does materialize, we're going to see some substantial build in stocks next year.
You were an early and relatively loud advocate of making new crop sales for corn. I suspect today has driven another nail in that coffin to the downside for pricing of the 2014 crop. Where do you see it going from here?
You know, I think you're going to continue to see some pressure on new crop corn prices. We took a pretty good hit right after these reports were released, but as long as the weather remains as favorable as it is and the crop conditions remain high, the market's going to begin to ante up on its yield expectations, and I think continued downside pressure. You really think that Deese corn at $4 is in the crosshairs now, and that potentially brings in crop insurance payments for the 2014 crop based on prices coming in well below the spring price.
USDA's numbers, at least pricing numbers for the new crop soybeans, have long been much lower than the old crop soybean. Yeah. Will that target go down too?
I suspect it will go down. They maintain a pretty wide spread on their price projection for obvious reasons this early, but I suspect that the whole range will drop in the July report.
Any words of wisdom for producers who are a bit awestruck at this time, I suspect?
You know, there's really not much that can be said at this point. I mean, it's just that one of those situations where we got a double barrel surprise on both stocks and acreage that result in a very, very rapid price decline. I suspect there is some potential that there will be some over response and that there may be some slight rebound in prices after the initial reaction, but I think at this juncture to expect any kind of sustained price rally in either corn or soybeans is probably not realistic.
Darrell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd.
Darrell Good, Ag Economist at the University of Illinois. I'm U of I Extension's Todd Gleason. Don't forget that you can find Darrell on the weekly outlook at farmdocdaily.illinois.edu. And one other item, Darrell, tomorrow morning you have a webinar that is open to those who would like to join you to talk about pricing of corn and soybeans.
Yes, Scott Irwin and myself will do a webinar at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning where we will briefly review the numbers that were in today's report and then develop balance sheets for corn and soybeans that reflect this new information and derive some price projections from those balance sheets.
Sign up ahead of time or join at the time?
Need to register ahead of time. It's a free webinar, but we do require pre-registration.
And you do that on the Farm Doc Daily website?
Absolutely. Yes.
farmdocdaily.illinois.edu. Thanks, Darrell.
Thank you.